It is over.
What is up, everybody? And we are back with another episode of the Hot Tag on this Flashback Friday. And fortunately, this week we are we're able to have our friend and host of this show, Brandi Smith, back with us. And this is the first time she's doing this live. So welcome, Brandi. And I know you have something that you'd like to say, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Guys, Jeff is my tag team partner for tonight. So you guys in the chat, come up with a name for our tag team. I wanted to be on this show in particular to be able to say some thank yous and to give you guys an update on how I'm doing. My cough is better today than it has been. My pulse is up, my oxygen rate is down. I still feel very tired, and I still, unfortunately, have the headache. But I'd like to dedicate this show to my mom, who has been tireless in making sure that I'm okay and that I'm not spreading the virus in the home. It's kind of strange to be in one room this whole time and have somebody have to sit food outside your door and stuff, but it puts a lot of things in perspective. I also want to dedicate this episode to one of my best friends, Amy, who is dealing with cancer, and I just want you guys to know how much I love you. I also would like to say that two little angels this week did a lot to boost my spirits, and I really appreciate it, and you two know who you are. And to the Insiders Army for your kind thoughts and your prayers. And for those of you who made it your mission to reach out to me and see that I was okay, thank you, Nails, for not only checking on me, but keeping me entertained. Nails has contacted me pretty much every day all week, and I feel like I have a new friend. And to Jeff, I could not have gotten through the past week without you. You are not just my co-host, you're my friend, and that means a lot. So, how about you guys? Let's move on to Dan Spivey.
All right, yeah, we're Brandi. That was that means a lot, and we're glad that you are able to be here this week. You've had a lot of people rooting for you, praying for you, and we're glad that you're able to be here this week. And before we get started, I want to shout out a few people: Kyle Scully, Hayden Garrett, famous KJ Carter, Days fan,
KJ,
Monica King,
Monica,
John Dioria, Nails.
Nails.
We have a motor alert in the house.
Uh-oh.
James Chadwick, Sonny Wolf, how are you?
Hey, Sonny.
Austin 316, Jacob Williamson, Jake, glad you could join us. Josh Savage, and Joe. Joe is in the house, so hey, Joe.
Hey,
Um,
Joe.
so, like Brandi said, we are going to be talking about Dan Spivey, aka Waylon Mercy. But before we get to Waylon Mercy, we have to first know about the man behind the character, which is Dan Spivey. So, Brandi, you go ahead and kick it off.
All right. Tag me in, Jeff. Um,
You're
and
in.
anybody who has, thank you. And anybody who has questions while I'm talking, feel free to go ahead and send them. we can stop and ask a few questions as we go. All right, Dan Spivey. When I think about Dan Spivey, I wouldn't have thought this until I did more research, but I really consider him a tag team specialist. And as we go through his history, I think you'll see why. He was born in the early 50s. He was trained by Dusty Rhodes and Barry Windham. He started out in the Florida territory, which was CWF at the time. Later on, when it was a developmental territory, they kind of switched the letters around and it was Florida Championship Wrestling. But it's basically the same at this time. It's just considered a territory. And so Dusty Rhodes, when he decides to go to Charlotte, where the Crockett promotion is, he took Dan with him. And he was put together with Scott Hall as a tag team called the American Starship. And so Dan Spivey was American Starship Eagle and Scott Hall was American Starship Coyote. And if you guys want to laugh, go back and look up these guys and see if you can find some pictures, because the description of their ring gear is absolutely hilarious. So they stay with Crockett for a little bit. Then they move on to the Mid-Atlantic territory. I don't think it was a place that Dan Spivey was very comfortable, so he goes back to Crockett and wrestles as American Starship Eagle. He does a couple tours in Japan. Then he moves on to his first stint in the WWE. And this is where our connection starts. You know, Barry Windham helped train him, but more of the connections to ultimately Bray Wyatt starts here. He's tag teamed with Mike Rotunda as the U.S. Express. They also refer to them as the American Express. And when I read American Express, I just had this image in my head, like if they'd had the Titantron back then, of them coming out with a giant picture of an American Express card on the Titantron. So they become a pretty good tag team. They wrestle, the Hart Foundation. They wrestle the Islanders. Mike Rotunda leaves the promotion for a little bit, and so that leaves the door open for Dan Spivey to be a part of WrestleMania 2's Wrestlers and Athletes Battle Royal. Then Mike Rotunda comes back, and they continue with their tag team and do pretty well. It wasn't until Mike Rotunda leaves again that they attempt to make Dan Spivey into another Hogan. They call him the Golden Boy. They change his gear to be, yellow. He's got long blonde hair at this point. And they really tried to give him that push as the next Hulk Hogan, or a lesser version of Hulk Hogan. And excuse me. And it just didn't get over with the fans. And throughout the rest of this time in WWF, he wrestles some low carders like Lanny Poffo. And he ends up leaving the WWE, WWF at this point. And he does some tours in Japan. He gets to work with, I'm sorry, guys. This has been happening since I've had the virus. I just completely forget what I was saying. Johnny Laurinaitis, and he gets to tag with Johnny Laurinaitis, and he also gets to tag with Stan Hansen. He ends up back in Crockett, and at some point, it's going to change to WCW. But they put him in the Varsity Club. And the varsity club was kind of this faction that was based on, if you actually were a football player before and now you're a wrestler, well, there's this club. So Mike Rotunda's in it. And they put Dan Spivey in it because he went to college at the University of Georgia and played on their football team. Go Dogs! And so that's how he became a part of that faction. Eventually, it kind of breaks up, and so Mr. Holla Holla Teddy Long comes along and puts Dan Spivey in a tag team with Sid Vicious. And oh, guys, one day we'll do an episode on him, but he's not my favorite. So they have lots of feuds with the Road Warriors, the Steiner brothers. Dan Spivey is not a huge fan of the Road Warriors. He doesn't feel like they're necessarily always, how do I put this, kind in the ring. He feels like they take liberties. And in one match, Sid ends up with a punctured lung from an injury in a match. And so Teddy Long brings in this tall, red-headed man named Mean Mark Callis. And so he becomes a part of the Skyscrapers. So you guys, there's another connection. They do really well. They continue to fight, the Road Warriors, the Steiners. But Dan Spivey ultimately leaves WCW over, number one, contract negotiations. But number two, he said he really took offense to the fact that he felt like the Road Warriors were taking liberties with Mark Calloway. So from 89 to 95, he continues to do tours in Japan. He's with All Japan, and he tags again with Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace, who is, Johnny Laurinaitis. So it's really interesting to me. He gets along really well with Johnny Laurinaitis, but he doesn't get along well with the Road Warriors, and there's another Laurinaitis in that group. So he enjoys being in Japan. I think it was a pretty lucrative stint for him. He ends up as a national tag team champion at a match in Tokyo, but for some reason NWA doesn't exactly recognize it. But he seems to really have grown and enjoyed his stints in Japan. And eventually he would do a few matches for the Global Wrestling Federation. That organization did not last very long. If you want to look it up, there's plenty of documentation on YouTube. Global Wrestling Federation was run by Herb Abrams. He died under some suspicious circumstances. So if you guys want an entertaining story, go back and look that up. And Dan Spivey was this wrestling organization's only American champion. And so then he ends up back in the WWE in 1995. And he gets the opportunity to come up with a very innovative character. Somebody we all might remember. And it's based on something hopefully we all have seen. So, partner, I'm tagging you in.
Yeah, that's a nice segue there. So yeah, we end up seeing Dan Spivey come back to the WWF at the time, and he is portraying a character he's calling Waylon Mercy, and Waylon Mercy is based on Robert De Niro's character in Cape Fear, Max Cady. And obviously the 91 Cape Fear is a remake of the original. But he adopted the style, the look, the Hawaiian shirt, all of those different things, and his demeanor was also based after that character. So one of the things that I'll say about Waylon Mercy and this character is that they spent a lot of time hyping this up. He had a lot of vignettes, and this is back in the day when WWE would put together all these cool vignettes for a new wrestler that was coming into the company, or someone that was reinventing a character. That's what he did, and he had a lot of really good vignettes and promos and different things that they did before he made his debut. And it was weird because when he was talking, you could tell that he had some dark kind of sinister thing going on with his character. But when we get to the last vignette before he makes his debut, one of the things that stands out is he says, "Lives are going to be in Waylon Mercy's hands." And that was actually featured in his entrance music. So,
hey, Jeff, I'm going to pop in for a second.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite vignette of his?
That's a great question. I actually like that last one of when he said lives going to be in Waylon Mercy's hands, because I kind of felt like that was a omen of things to come. Even though, unfortunately they were cut shorter than anyone expected. I was really excited at that point to see what he would do.
My favorite is, if you guys can go look and find some of his vignettes, there's one where he's sitting at a picnic table and you can hear children in the background, and he's speaking in this very slow, southern, gentlemanly voice, but you know that there's menace behind it. And that was one of my favorites. Also, Jeff, can you describe his tattoos?
Yes. He had several tattoos. They were temporary, by the way. But he had a dagger on his forehead, which was the one that really got me. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I wonder if he actually got the tattoo on his head. When he was obviously, when I was a kid, I thought it was real. So I thought his tattoo was real. So I thought that was pretty cool for someone to have a tattoo on their face, let alone their forehead. But he had some different ones on his arms. And I know a lot of you can see some in the pictures, and you'll see the rest of them through the rest of the episode as we keep going. But yeah, like Brandi said, he had these vignettes where he has this menacing thing going on, and then all of a sudden when he debuts, he is going to the ring and he's shaking the hands of fans. Yes, Nails, I did draw on my face. I did. Nails said, "Admit it, Jeff. Did you draw on your face?" Yes, I did. I drew on my face.
What did you draw on?
I have to admit it. One time I drew a spider. My mom didn't really like that too much, but yeah. So so when he would go to the ring, he would shake the hands of the fans. He'd be very nice to the referee and even his opponent. But once that bell rang, it was a completely different story. He was just vicious and he would just beat the crap out of his opponents. And like once he beat the guy up or whoever he was wrestling, after the bell rang, he was nice again. So he was a little bit demented there. The last thing I'll do is the one thing I'll say is his career. He ended up retiring um, because he had a lot of injuries. So the heights that he could have reached were never realized because he was injured and they couldn't get him to where he needed to go. But he wrestled a lot of people. So he wrestled a very young Jeff Hardy, Bob Holly, the 1-2-3 Kid, aka I'm trying to think of all the names he's had.
Six.
X Pac, Six, yeah. Doink the Clown, he wrestled him. He also wrestled Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, which was interesting because that was his old tag team partner, Scott Hall. And he also wrestled Diesel. Um, so yeah, he made one pay-per-view appearance, and that was at In Your House, and he actually lost to Savio Vega in that match. Yep, he sure did. So yeah, that's a little bit more about the character of Waylon Mercy. Brandi, I'll kick it back over to you so you can add in anything that you feel like I glanced over or didn't go into a lot of detail about.
What I love about his match with Doink, I feel like they could have done more with that. Make it like an insane asylum match or something like that. That would have been really interesting. Waylon Mercy, Mr. Spivey, he has to retire in 95 because of injury. In an interview I saw of him, he said he wished he had gotten to do so much more with that character. And I truly feel like he could have. He After he retired from wrestling, he attempted to have a modeling career. He also worked for his family business, and then later on he became an addictions counselor. He kicked some of his demons, and he became an addictions counselor. And I feel like that's a wonderful example that he can give to um, fellow wrestlers, and hopefully make a difference in people's lives. He is credited with having a huge influence on the Bray Wyatt character. Um, he was at the Performance Center at the same time that Bray was there. And so Bray has stated that it was then that he really helped him develop this character. And if you listen to the cadence of both of their voices with their respective characters, I think you can see the similarity. There was one vignette where Waylon Mercy was in a rocking chair. And of course, we know how much that comes in on Bray's character, on Bray, and on Bray's mystique, I guess you could say. But also, I thought about this week too. I don't know if Bray credits Jake the Snake with anything, but again, if you listen to the cadence of his voice, and then go back and listen to some of those old Jake promos, and you get the verbosity, the cadence of the voice. Again, that's another thing that's very similar to me. Bray's attire would be similar to that of Dan Spivey when he first, debuts as the cult leader Bray. He'd sit in the rocking chair and have the loose pants, the Hawaiian shirt. So there's definitely some parallels there. There's a lot of parallels there. And especially this week in the swamp match, I would love him for Bray to take a little bit more of that Waylon Mercy sinister attitude, that quiet threat, and kind of, insert that into his character a little more. I would truly, truly love it. And if Waylon Mercy showed up in the swamp, that wouldn't hurt my feelings either. So, what questions do you guys have about this character, about his effect on Bray Wyatt, about his effect on some of the more sinister / supernatural characters that WWE has been able to do over the past few years. I feel like Waylon Mercy was a character before his time. You know, I feel like if it had been 10 years later, it would have exploded.
I agree. I think he would have been. I think he would have had a really really good strong run in the WWE if that character had come along a little bit later, because what he was doing at that time was just. I mean, obviously you had the Undertaker then, but not much more in the way of this type of character. So I think it would have been a really good run if he had been able to stay healthy.
And can you imagine if he had hung on just one more year, what a match with him and Mankind would have been like?
Oh my goodness, that would have been amazing. Would have been amazing.
And then if he could have fought his former tag team partner Psycho Sid when he's got that aspect to his character, you know, that would have been awesome. Now, guys, I'm not a Sid fan, but the Psycho Sid character and Waylon Mercy, I feel like could have done some business.
Yeah. Uh, Brandi Nell says, I didn't realize there was that much influence from him. Do you think The Fiend and Funhouse Bray is still inspired because of the split personalities?
I think it's mostly cult leader Bray, but I think the Fiend could be inspired in the fact that when Waylon got into the ring, he snapped. When he heard that bell, he snapped. And it was described to me like, you know, his eyes just went crazy. So, you know, maybe the Fiend is that snapping point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Come on, folks. I know we got some questions out there. But while we're waiting on our next question, just want to say that if you get a chance to like and subscribe, um, follow us on all the social media platforms we're on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. We are now streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch, so you can catch us at all of those places. And if you want to take the Insiders Wrestling Podcast on the go, we are on just about every podcast platform that you could name. So Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, you name it, we're there. So check us out. Brandi, Days fan wants to let you know that they're praying for you and hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
Let's see. Nels ask, what do you think a match would be like between Prime Bray and Prime Waylon? How would you book it?
It would be a WrestleMania match. Hopefully close to the top of the card because, you know, there's so many similarities there. I feel like it doesn't need a gimmick. It doesn't need a sell. It doesn't need tables, ladders, and chairs. I feel like they would burn it down just themselves. And I feel like it would be a WrestleMania match. And the build up, the vignettes they could do, the build up would be even more exciting than the match itself.
Nels has another question for you here. If he did make an appearance at the Swamp match, what would you like him to do?
I think I'd like to get just glimpses in the trees, almost like he was a phantom. And maybe, you know, have Bray kind of looking around like, what's there, you know? I think that would be really interesting. Knowing that he doesn't have to get physically involved, but he can definitely get psychologically involved.
Famous KJ Carter says, Brandi, you think about Waylon Mercy was just like Bray Wyatt? Do you think they're just alike, or what would you say their differences would be?
Um, that's a tough question. I think Bray's character has morphed into maybe a little bit more violent than what Waylon was. They both have that sinister attitude with their characters. They both have that creepy, quiet voice. I don't think that Funhouse Bray is related to Waylon. I feel like maybe a character representing Waylon is in the Funhouse. And there's a point in the movie, in Cape Fear, where Max Cady just snaps. And so, therefore, if Waylon Mercy is basing his character on Max Cady, then the snapping point for Bray, again, for me, would be The Fiend. And I've also thought about who could have been Waylon Mercy's sister Abigail, and I don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah, that that would have been interesting there.
I would like to know, though,
Let's-
if they used the same rocking chair.
That'd be a cool callback.
That would.
Moda says, could you imagine a face-to-face promo between the two?
I'd love it. I would love it.
I would too. Kyle Scully says, do you think he would come back to manage Bray for a little bit in a few years?
I don't know. He's clearly close to the family. You know, his relationship with Barry Windham, him tagging several times with Bray's father. Maybe Bray could talk him into it, but as far as WWE talking him into it on their own, no.
Let's see here. Sean Rousset says, I would like to see Waylon introduce the Swamp match.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
James Chadwick says, if Waylon Mercy was put in the Hall of Fame, would Bray be the one to induct him?
I think it would be Mike Rotunda.
I was going to say either him or Undertaker.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nell says, do you think Waylon would make it in wrestling today? Who would he feud with if not Bray?
Without all of his injuries, yeah, I could see a feud with Bray, but I could also see a very strong alliance with Bray. I feel like if he were healthy today, he might go after Aleister Black. He also might go after the Monday Night Messiah. I can make those connections. What do you think, Jeff?
I was just thinking Seth Rollins. Yeah, I was just thinking Seth Rollins. Because I think that would be good. The mind games between the two would be good.
Absolutely.
And you know, I want people to understand this too, because I think a lot of times when we start doing the fantasy booking, we automatically go heel versus babyface. It can be heel versus heel, and that's just as exciting and just as good. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, I would love to see him against Seth Rollins or someone to that effect. Jason P, shout out to you. Moda says, sensational Sherry Martel would have been a great Sister Abigail. She had dark hair and her character was always crazy.
I love that, brother. I love that. I had not thought about that, but I can see that. Absolutely.
And we may be talking about Sherry pretty soon, Moda. So um, just keep that in mind. Nell says, I think he would be good against Kevin Owens. That would be pretty good. Um, well, let's see here. What else do we have?
The Demon Finn
So
Balor.
Brandi,
The Demon Finn Balor.
yes,
How about that, you guys?
that would be awesome. So Brandi, let's say that let's say that he didn't have to retire and he was able to stay wrestling and had his health. Um, do you think he needed someone to manage him, or do you think he was fine on his own? And then the second part of that question is, what do you think his ceiling would have been?
I don't think he needed a manager. He could clearly talk for himself. He could clearly make his character stand on its own. I don't know what the ceiling would have been. We all know Vince loves big guys. So, for instance, when Sid had the title and he was playing the Psycho Sid character, I could have seen, a feud start between the two of them and maybe Waylon get the title off of Sid. I think that could have had a lot of potential with mind games. Well, as long as Sid was awake that day. But I could see him going into the ministry. I could see him being a part of the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
As one of Undertaker's henchmen.
Yeah.
I thought about, I hope he wouldn't have ended up in the oddities. That's all I got to say. Yeah, I mean, I could see him put into the Brothers of Destruction picture as well. Doing some mind games there,
Right.
some mind games with Paul Bearer.
That's very true. James Chadwick says Waylon Mercy versus Broken Matt Hardy.
Waylon Mercy, dude, come on.
Let's see. I would love to see that though. I'd love to see the build up to that.
Well, look, think about how Bray was with Matt. Okay, so it's not a stretch to go, okay, this is how Waylon might be with Matt. You see the connection?
Right.
And
Very, very strong connection.
I do not think that Waylon would get thrown into the lake of reincarnation.
That would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see who else we've got here. Wrestling Days fan says, I want the Fiend versus the Demon in a Hell in a Cell match.
Yes.
Me too. I'd love to see it. Moda says, will do. Love sensational Sherry. That's a mouthful. Let's see who else we have here.
And if you guys have a chance, go back and listen to Waylon Mercy's intro music. It's creepy.
Yes.
And here's another connection. Waylon Mercy, the beginning of his theme music, and he's also said it in promos. He says, people's lives will be in Waylon Mercy's hands. Okay? Then you have Bray, and he says, got the whole world in his hands. That's part of his music, okay? Here's one more connection. Braun Strowman always says everybody's going to get these hands. So I like how that flows. I like that kind of hand connection through each of those characters who are significant to the Bray character.
I never thought about that connection. I never thought about the Braun and Bray connection. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Darren, who's joining us on Twitch, says Mercy was very, very underrated.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
All right, guys. I'll give Jeff a chance to get some questions together, but here's my surprise for the week. Normally, you guys know I do a book recommendation. Well, this week I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a documentary recommendation. Hopefully, all of you are familiar with some of the documentaries out there. Hopefully, some of you have watched them. I am recommending The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, which of course has our buddy DDP. DDP, if you do in fact have COVID-19, please take care, brother. Take care. And it's a very moving film. It's worth your time. It's available on YouTube, although you have to buy or rent. So definitely, it's worth your time. On a second note, if you haven't tried DDP yoga, try it. If you are visually impaired, you are able to use the DDP yoga app. It describes as much as possible. You know, there are some things I feel like I would need a sighted person to help me with, but for the most part, you can follow along with DDP.
That is awesome. I love that documentary, by the way, too. It's yeah. I mean, the man had a very difficult upbringing, and I mean, what he did in the wrestling business and continues to do is just amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
I feel like the emotion just radiates from the screen and from the speaker. It's like if you can't feel what you're hearing, then you are not checked into that documentary.
Very true.
And if you go back and watch what is it, Beyond the Map, which was in '99,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yep.
tells a huge part of Jake's story. So if you even want to go back and watch that before you watch Resurrection of Jake the Snake, you get a little bit more of the picture. And you also get some good Mick Foley footage.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. So, Brandi, you want to tell everyone what we're doing next week?
Guys, I have a surprise for you, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Next week is going to be Ask Brandi. So please send in your questions in the chat next week. Please send questions to Twitter to Joe or Jeff. I'm in the Facebook group. If you send questions, I can save them until next week's episode. But I wanted you guys to have the opportunity to really ask anything you wanted to ask. I'll answer wrestling questions. I'll answer general life questions. If you want to know more about what it's like to be a blind wrestling fan, I'm an open book, guys. So just be thinking about what you want to ask, okay?
And keep them appropriate, please. Please,
Yes,
please.
Yes, please. We're a family show. Also, guys, don't forget about tomorrow night, the watch along. I'm so excited about this. And then, of course, we have the pay-per-view Sunday night with the Insiders Reaction Show following. So you never know who might show up. And I hope
Very
you
true.
guys are excited about the action this weekend. I am. And if my Insiders partners don't text me during the pay-per-view and let me know what's going on, well, their lives might be in Waylon Mercy's hands.
It's very true. We could be in some serious trouble. All right, guys. Well, again, Brandi, awesome to have you back this week.
I
I know
missed
that
you
we have been.
guys.
We have been planning to do this episode for a while, and glad that we got to do it today. Again, please hit the like button on this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Follow us on Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, all those good things. And like Brandi said, tomorrow night we are doing our very first watch along for Slammiversary. So really excited about that. Join us tomorrow. We'll start at. I'm actually going to get started at 7:30. Joe may be a little bit late because he's got to work, but we'll make do until he gets in. He should be in around 7:45 or so, but we'll start off at about 7:30, and when we'll see you then. And guys, thank you, Brandi. I'll let you end the show here.
I want to say thank you to my tag team partner tonight and my tag team partner from last week, Mr. Jeff Watson. You guys started Jeff chant in the chat. Started Jeff chant. Next week, the Ask Brandi segment, no holds barred, okay? Just make it PG. And we love you guys and appreciate you. And I'm tagged out.
See you tomorrow night for the watch along, and Sunday for Extreme Rules reactions, and we'll be back again on Monday for Abby's Window. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.